Okay, thanks for attending today's demonstration of ThinkWare's new onboarding product. This replaces our old onboarding product, similar functionality, brand new user interface, and some more features added to the onboarding workflows. So basically, I've signed in as an example customer. This would be one of your customers, Smith Plastic Incorporated. And the way it works for onboarding, I'll start with a little bit of the setup, and then we'll actually spend most of our time actually walking through an onboarding process. So for each of your customers, they can have multiple profiles. And essentially what a profile is it's a type of employee that they're hiring. So they might just have one generic profile they use for all their employees to fill out their documents and fill in some basic information. Or they may be more sophisticated and have multiple profiles based upon the type of employee that they're hiring. So out of the box, our system comes with a profile set up and ready to go, and the customer can simply replicate it or change any of the existing profiles to meet whatever needs they have. So when we look at the setup of a profile, we have specific tasks associated with that profile. And so what that is these are the different things that we want the customer to go through and the employee to go through in basically a workflow to actually complete the onboarding process. So you can add and remove tasks. You might have a simpler process for more basic employees and more complex process for your more technical employees. So, and in fact, the customer or you can actually add custom tasks at any time during the process. So if they want to add a task to a profile, you simply add the task and then you would add the fields to the task. It doesn't require any skills or anything like that. There's no programming skills required to create optional tasks and to create fields. These fields would be custom fields added. They simply just click the add new task field, type in the name of the field and what type of field it is, and they're essentially done at that point. So once the profiles are set up and ready to go, you can start using the onboarding monitor to actually hire new employees into the system. So the onboarding monitor shows each employee and where they are in the actual onboarding process for the system. So I can see right away that where each of these employees are, what employee tasks they are in, and where the client is in the process itself. So if I expand any of these, I can see in more detail when they started each of the different steps in the process. If the client was actually hiring a new employee, they would click the Add New Employee button. And the design of the system is it's designed to work either as the employee sitting at a kiosk or a computer in the client's office working with an HR person or just filling out their forms, or, as we'll see in this example, they're at home and we're going to send them an email inviting them to join our company. So as we come through this, anything in red is required, and you get to decide what fields are required in the system. So I'll fill out all these things so we have default values fill in, such as the Ohio hourly, so we get default pay codes and deductions and benefits filled in. We'll put in a department, we'll give this person a position, and the status and pay period filled automatically from my profiles. So once I click next, I can put some basic information about the employee. First of all, I choose what type of employee I'm hiring, so I'll use the technician profile. And then I'm going to put in the name of the employee, so we'll hire Lee Nichols. Date of birth and SSN are optional. Lots of times you won't have this at this point, but if you do happen to have all this information, you can put it in right here. And then this is the scenario where Lee Nichols is at home, so I'm going to actually send Lee an email, and he can come into the system and then click on a link in the email and fill out all his own information. There is also a login code, so if Lee was in the office, we could send him to a website with a login code and he could fill out all the information himself. Due date is when the profile is due to be done. You get to customize what your rule is, so in this case we gave it 1 week to get this actually done, and there'll be reminders and warnings if the employee onboarding has not been completed in time. So once I click submit, this is when it actually goes ahead and sends out Lee an email saying, it's time to go through your onboarding process. Now, as Lee's manager, I don't have to wait for Lee to start. I can continue on with the stuff I need to do while I'm waiting for Lee. So if I actually click on, as Lee's manager, to continue onboarding process right here, it'll take me into basically the first screen of information for Lee. So if I see my information right here, anything in red is what is required. So I'll go ahead and put in the start date and original hire date of the employee, And then the only other field that I'm actually requiring is the pseudo state, which you could also have defaulted if you wanted to. So I'll have that as Ohio too. I'll let the employee fill in the address and all those different things. So when I click submit, it takes me to the next step. And this next step was actually one of the custom steps added by the client or by you, the PEO ASO payroll company. So when you actually put this step in the system, it looks like any other step in the system. So if I come in here, I can actually put in, okay, here's my carrier, here's my address, I can put in phone number, any other information that I want to put in here. So these were all custom fields added by the customer. So also, any instructions on any step are customizable. You can use our out-of-the-box instructions, or you can create your own. And we also have the ability to add tips and websites in the system. So once I click submit, it takes me on to the next step. And this is my additional information step. So this is just additional information I may or may not use in the system. But at any time right now, the customer can say, your customer manager can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to hold off on doing the rest of this. I have other things I need to do. So anytime they can click the log out, it remembers where they are. And now we can pretend we're Lee. We're going to be the employee that's being hired in the onboarding process. So as you might have seen, Lee got an email. This email is customizable. The subject of the email, you can customize the verbiage, you can customize the content of the email, etc. So, Lee, welcome to the company. Please log in and verify who you are and start the onboarding process. So as a nice white labeled URL, you can label that URL whatever you want. You can have the name of your company, the name of your client's company, whatever you want in that URL, in that link. So when Lee clicks on the link, brings into an authentication page, so he just types in his first and last name, and then we'll type in his email address, and he confirms who he is. And then he gets to self-register for the web self-service product. So this will be his user ID and password from now going forward, not only during the onboarding process, but if he is hired as an employee in the system, this will be his user ID and password to view his paycheck stubs, log into Darwinet, etc. So once I click save, it takes me to challenge questions. I'll skip those for now. And it takes Lee Nichols to his own personalized onboarding area. So it has already filled out any information it got from the customer, your customer manager, and Lee's just now required to fill out the rest of his stuff. So I'll come in here and fill out anything else that we're requiring or that makes sense for him to fill out. So he puts in his address information there, and he starts his workflow. So these are the tasks that are assigned to him. Now he doesn't have to follow an order. He can actually skip around if he wants, but if he follows an order, it'll take him through kind of a logical suggested path. So any optional additional information he wants to report, nothing I would need to put in here. Once he clicks submit here, it takes him to the first of his forms. And so the forms will be either forms provided by us, like the federal and state tax forms, the I-9, those types of forms are maintained by us for you. This is a form that either you or your customer put in. This is a notification of joining a PEO or an ASO relationship form. These can be conditional. So it can look at the state, the department, the job this employee's in, and present this form if this employee meets that criteria. So this happens to be a view-only form that we want him to sign. So, and this form will actually be signed both by the customer manager and the employee. So the employee is going to sign it first, so he clicks to sign it. You have an option whenever employees are verifying documents, they can just click to verify, and basically the fact that they've signed in means that we'll just verify based upon that. Or we can force a full signature every time the employee looks at a document. I'll copy this so we can use that over and over. And that's what I'm doing in this example. So that's really up to you and your customer whether or not you're going to require the full signature or just a click to verify. You get to make that decision. So once I verify and sign this, this is now a signed document. This document will now live with Lee's record forever. So when Lee, if you ever come back to Lee's record in the system, you'll always be able to see this signed document from now on. So it'll contain Lee's signature at the bottom, and this document will always be there. So once we click continue, it takes to the next step. Brings up the federal W-4. So I can give myself a little more information, collapse the menu items. And the federal W-4 is right here, comes in. He can actually just type on the different areas of the boxes, and once he's filled in that information, he clicks to sign it, and that information carries through to the back office. So now he can go ahead and put in his user ID and password again, and social security number, and he verifies and signs that document. So now that document is done. Now, since this was an interactive document where I was actually putting information, if he had made a mistake, he can unlock this document, it'll remove his signature, and then he can fix anything he needs to in the system. Clicks continue, goes on to the state tax documents to text his work and home state, and will suggest the appropriate form for him to fill out. So he goes into here, here's his Ohio form, so again, puts in any information he needs to put in, signs this document also. So we'll go ahead and sign this document. Verifies and signs that document, and we've got the state tax document done. It will also display what he's chosen on this page, and if he clicks submit, it'll take him to a grid. So if for some reason he needs to manually add another state, he can do that, and it'll detect his work and home state, so anything that'll need to be there will already be there based upon the rules. But if for some reason he needs to manually add another state, he can do that now if you give him those rights. Once he clicks continue, it takes him now to any other data entry you might want him to do. So if he needs to add dependents, he can do that here. If he needs to add a direct deposit, there's an option to waive it, or if he does add direct deposits, we will verify routing numbers. Let me grab a routing number really quick, and so we can put that in. So grab a routing number. We will verify that that routing number is valid, and bring in the bank. If you had a question about how to find the routing number, we have the check image there, and then he just puts in his account number. And once he's done with that step, he's got his direct deposit done, and he clicks continue. If he needs to add licenses, he can do that here. So, if he needs to add a CDL license or something like that, same type of concept. He can add any of that information right on the screen, put in an effective date, and then an expiration date, anything that needs to be put in about that. Click submit, and it takes him to the employee side of the I-9 as the next step. So this, in my scenario, Lee's doing this at home. He's not going to be in the office till next week. So he can do the employee side of the I-9. So we can go ahead and say he's a U.S. citizen, click submit, and it'll display the I-9, this form that we take care of for you. And then he can review to make sure the information is appropriate on the I-9, and he can sign the I-9 electronically here. So we'll have Lee Nichols sign the I-9, put in his password, and his social security number. So he verifies and signs that document, and now he's done with all of his steps. When he clicks continue at this point, it will take him to his finalize page. So any documents that we decided not to display along the way, along kind of the workflow path that we want him to review, will be here. So we decided to put the employee handbook on the last step. He has to complete this document. He cannot finish until everything's completed. Now at this point, he could still go back and look at any of their steps if he wanted to. It's still live. This is just a suggested path. It's wide open. But so we have the employee handbook here. We want him to complete this document. He goes in and completes the document. It'll give him his nice customized handbook with a signature area right here. So he clicks to sign the handbook. In this case, I want him to do the full signature. So he's going to sign this. Verifies and signs that handbook. And that's the last step that he was required to do before we finish. So now everything's been completed. He's completed everything. And now he goes ahead and does his final signature here. He signs that. He'll get a custom modal here. You control the verbiage in this, saying onboarding's been completed. Your client's notified that this person's completed their side of the process. Make sure they get the stuff they need to do. They get their stuff done. So Lee's done with everything he needs to do. So now let's once again take on the role of your customer, the manager of Lee Nichols in this case. So they got an email saying, okay, Lee Nichols is done with his stuff. Let's go in and finish everything I need to do. So I'll sign in as the customer. Go to my onboarding area within Darwinet, and go to my onboarding monitor right here. So within my onboarding monitor, I can see here's Lee Nichols. He's gone to the finalize step and he's completed that step. And if I want to see more detail about it, I can expand it and see in detail where I am and where the client is. So if I want to come back in, now your client manager can kind of continue where they left off. So by clicking submit, takes them to the next step. In this case, this is that form that Lee Nichols signed before that we want the manager also to sign. So Lee Nichols' manager will come in here, put in their user ID and password, and they will now have signed the document. So document's been signed both by Lee Nichols and the manager. They click continue, and now we're just defaulting in all the rest of the information. So here are the pay codes. They defaulted in. We can add manually. We can remove them. Those all came in from our profile in our employee class. So we can just put in his pay rate here, and that will auto adjust all his other pay rates. If I wanted to add a bonus or any other type of pay code, I can add those too if I wanted to. So once I finish with that step, any deductions that are automatically going to come in, like an advance or uniform deduction, I can enter those in directly in the grid. Click continue. If you had any benefits I needed to add, I can do that right here. The direct deposit, this is the direct deposit that the employee put in. I continue on past here. I can review it in detail to make sure it looks okay. So once the employer's verified the direct deposit, it takes them to the next step, which is going to be adding PTO policies. So if I come in here, I add a PTO policy, I'll look at the vacation policy, click add, and that's put in the system. So we'll automatically add the correct PTO policies to the employee. I'm at the license step. It's reviewing the license the employee put into the system. I click submit there. And if I needed to add a license, I can do that also. And then finally, the last step in this version of the onboarding process is the employer side I-9. So I can either do the employer side I-9 right now, say it is a week later and Lee Nichols is in the office, or I can click the complete later button, which will take this entire step and move it over to the permanent record in Darwinet. So we can let the employee get processed through. So say it's Tuesday of this week, the employee's not going to be in until next Monday. By using the complete later, that step will still be live and remain there. It'll still be live in the system against Lee's record, but I can finish off Lee, and that way have him live in the back office ready for payroll at that point. So if I come in here and I click in Lee Nichols, I'm the manager, put in the manager's user ID and password, sign and finalize, this employee has now been completed and is ready for payroll processing. So then it just depends upon whether or not you do the auto approve or do you have some sort of separate approval for the information that's contained in Darwinet. Because this will go into the back office ready for payroll processing. And once again, any documents that were filled out during the process will automatically be stored in the record. So if I return to Darwinet, I will have all the onboarding documents forever out there. So I can look back, at 2014, I can look at an I-9 from an employee I onboarded from 2014 if I needed to. I can download these locally. If I ever go through something like an I-9 audit, I can actually search any of these documents in our document library and see all these documents, select them all, download them if I needed to. So I always have these documents until you actually choose to physically purge these documents or employees out of the system. They'll be there forever in the system. We are further expanding our document management in the next version of Darwinet. We're calling it the library, and it'll have many more features built into the system. Anyways, thanks for your time today, and let me know if you have any questions.